I overheard my son say, "Don't worry, he'll never check the papers." I kept quiet, signed nothing, and waited for the meeting he didn't know I'd attend. It was a Thursday evening in October. I remember because the leaves were starting to turn, and I'd spent the afternoon raking them into piles that would be scattered again by morning. The kind of pointless work that makes you feel productive while accomplishing nothing permanent. I'd just come inside through the back door, shoes off, jacket still on, when I heard voices from the living room. My son, Derek, and his wife, Vanessa. They didn't know I was home. My truck was in the shop, so I'd borrowed Jim's sedan from next door. Different vehicle in the driveway means different assumptions about who's home. People get careless when they think they're alone. I stood in the kitchen, one hand still on the doorknob, and listened. "He's not going to read through 40 pages of legal language," Derek was saying. His voice had that smooth confidence he'd developed in his 20s, the kind that made people trust him in business meetings. He never does. He'll just sign where we tell him to sign. But what if he asks questions? Vanessa's voice was quieter, more careful. She was always the planner, the one who thought 3 steps ahead. Then we redirect. Keep it simple. Talk about how this protects him, protects the family assets. He'll eat it up. He likes feeling useful. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just a kind of crystalline clarity, like when you're driving in fog and suddenly the road appears right in front of you. "And the timeline?" Vanessa asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. The meeting's already scheduled. He doesn't even know about it yet. By the time he figures out what's happening, it'll be done. I heard movement, footsteps crossing the hardwood floor. I stepped back silently, easing the door closed with the kind of care you use when you don't want to wake a sleeping child. Then I walked around to the front of the house, made noise opening the front door, called out a greeting like I'd just arrived. By the time I walked into the living room, they were sitting on the couch looking at their phones, the picture of casual evening domesticity. "Hey, Dad," Derek said, glancing up with a smile. "Didn't hear you come in?" "Just got back," I said. "Jim's car is quiet." Vanessa looked up then, her expression pleasant and blank. "How was your day?" "Fine, usual." I sat in my chair, the old recliner that had been in this house for 15 years. "Yours?" "Good. Busy." Derek stretched, setting his phone on the coffee table. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Financial planning stuff. Nothing urgent, but we should probably sit down sometime soon and go over some paperwork." "What kind of paperwork?" "Estate planning, mostly. Making sure everything's organized. You know, the responsible adult stuff you always told me to handle." He grinned, and I could see the boy he'd been, the one who'd learned to charm his way out of trouble by age 7. I nodded slowly. "Sure, whenever you want." "Great. I'll set something up. Maybe next week?" "Sounds good." We talked about other things after that, small things. Weather, neighbors, the leak in my bathroom sink that I kept meaning to fix. Normal conversation, the kind that fills space without meaning anything. But underneath it, I was thinking about that phrase. "He'll never check the papers." People talk louder when they think you're obsolete. After they left, I sat in my chair for a long time, staring at nothing. The house was quiet, except for the furnace kicking on and the distant sound of traffic. I thought about the years I'd spent teaching Derek to be honest, to be straightforward, to look people in the eye and tell them the truth even when it was hard. I thought about the college tuition I'd paid, the business loan I'd co-signed, the down payment I'd helped with on his first house. I thought about how confident he'd sounded, talking about me like I was some doddering old fool who couldn't read a legal document. Finally, I got up and went to my office. It used to be a second bedroom, but after the divorce, I'd converted it into a space where I kept files and paperwork and all the boring administrative debris of a life. I had filing cabinets organized by year and category. I had folders for taxes, insurance, property deeds, investment accounts, medical records. Everything labeled, everything in its place. I'm not careless with important documents. I never have been. I pulled out the folder labeled Estate Planning and started reading. I hadn't looked at these papers in years, but I knew what was in them. My will, updated 5 years ago. Power of attorney documents, signed and notarized. Beneficiary designations on my retirement accounts. Nothing complicated, nothing fancy. Just the basic framework of making sure things were handled properly if something happened to me. I read through every page, slowly, checking dates and signatures and witness names. Everything was in order. Nothing had been changed without my knowledge. So what papers was Derek talking about? I closed the folder and sat back, tapping my fingers on the desk. If he wanted to change something, he'd need me to sign. If he wanted to manipulate something, he'd need to convince me it was in my best interest, and apparently he thought that would be easy. I felt that cold clarity again, sharp and clean. I wouldn't sign anything. Not yet. First, I'd figure out what game we were playing. Over the next 3 days, I did what any reasonable person would do. I checked the boring, public documents that most people ignore until they need them. Property records, tax assessments, beneficiary information on accounts where I could access it online. I even called my insurance company and asked them to mail me a copy of my current policy, claiming I'd lost my paperwork in a filing accident. People are helpful when you sound confused and slightly incompetent. What I found was interesting, not alarming, not illegal, just interesting. Someone had requested copies of my property deed from the county recorder's office 6 weeks ago. The request was public record, and it had Derek's name on it. That wasn't suspicious by itself. He might have needed it for any number of legitimate reasons, but combined with that overheard conversation, it made me curious. I also found that someone had called my financial advisor's office 3 times in the past 2 months. My advisor, Paul, mentioned it casually when I called to ask about my account balance. "Your son's been asking about your retirement accounts," Paul said. "Just general questions about how things are structured, what would happen in various scenarios. I told him I couldn't give specifics without your permission, of course." "Of course," I said. "What kind of scenarios?" "Oh, what happens if you become incapacitated? Who makes decisions? How assets are distributed? Normal family planning questions." "Normal. Right." I thanked Paul and hung up, then sat at my desk staring at my notes. Derek was researching something, gathering information, building a picture of my financial situation from the outside, like someone preparing for a negotiation, or preparing to present me with papers I wouldn't read. The meeting invite arrived on Monday. It came via email, forwarded from Derek's account. A calendar invitation for the following Wednesday at 2 p.m. at the office of Patterson and Klein, attorneys at law. The subject line read, "Family Estate Planning Meeting." The body of the email was brief. "Hi, Dad. Got us scheduled with the attorney to review some updates. Should only take an hour or so. Looking forward to getting this handled. D." I stared at the invitation for a long time. Then I opened a new browser window and looked up Patterson and Klein. They were a small firm, 2 partners, focused on estate planning and elder law. Their website showed smiling photos of the attorneys, both in their 50s, with testimonials about how they helped families navigate difficult transitions with compassion and expertise. I called their office. "Patterson and Klein, how may I help you?" "Hi, this is Robert Brennan. I have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday with Derek Brennan regarding estate planning." "Oh yes, Mr. Brennan. We have you down for 2 o'clock. "Great. I just wanted to confirm. Who'll be attending besides myself and my son?" A pause, then the sound of clicking like she was checking a computer. "Let me see. We have you. Derek Brennan, Vanessa Brennan, and Mr. Patterson will be facilitating." "Vanessa too?" "Of course." "Perfect," I said. "And what documents should I bring?" "Oh, Mr. Patterson has everything he needs. This is really just a review and signing meeting. Very straightforward." "A signing meeting." "I see. Thank you." I hung up before she could say anything else. So, they'd already prepared documents, already set up a meeting with an attorney, already decided what I'd be signing, how the conversation would go, what the outcome would be, and they'd done it all assuming I'd just show up and play my part. I pulled up my calendar and accepted the meeting invitation. Then I composed a new email, not to Derek, but to Patterson and Klein directly. I kept it simple, professional, the kind of thing that wouldn't raise any flags. "Mr. Patterson, this is Robert Brennan. I'm scheduled to meet with you on Wednesday regarding estate planning. I wanted to reach out in advance to discuss the scope of what we'll be reviewing. Would you have 15 minutes this week for a brief phone call? I'm available at your convenience. Best regards, Robert Brennan." He called me back within 2 hours. "Mr. Brennan, this is James Patterson. I got your email. Happy to chat now if you have a moment." "I do, thank you." I kept my voice friendly, curious, not suspicious. I just wanted to understand what we'll be covering on Wednesday. My son mentioned estate planning updates, but I wasn't clear on the specifics. "Of course. Yes, Derek reached out a few weeks ago about revising your power of attorney documents and updating your will to reflect some changes in family circumstances. We've drafted some documents based on the information he provided, and Wednesday's meeting is to review everything with you and, if you're comfortable with it, execute the new documents." "I see. And what changes specifically?" "Well, primarily transferring certain decision-making authorities to Derek, establishing him as your primary agent for financial and healthcare decisions, Also, some adjustments to how your assets would be distributed, consolidating things to make administration easier down the road, all fairly standard elder planning, really. Elder planning. I was 62. And Derek provided all this information to you? Yes, he did. He mentioned you'd been having some health concerns and wanted to get things organized proactively. Very responsible of him, actually. A lot of families wait until there's a crisis. Health concerns. I'd had a physical 3 months ago. My doctor said I was in better shape than most men 20 years younger. Right, I said slowly. Well, I appreciate the overview. I'll see you Wednesday. Looking forward to it, Mr. Brennan. After I hung up, I sat very still, feeling something dark and hot start to replace that cold clarity. Health concerns, decision-making authorities, consolidating assets. They were trying to take control, not illegally. Everything Patterson described was probably perfectly legal if I signed it. But based on a story, a narrative Derek had created, about a father who was declining, who needed help, who needed his son to step in and manage things. A father who'd never checked the papers. I opened my desk drawer and took out a small digital recorder I'd bought years ago for recording lectures when I was teaching night classes. I checked the battery, made sure it had memory space, then set it aside. Wednesday was 3 days away. I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. I'd wait, and I'd watch, and I'd let them think everything was going according to plan. And then I'd attend the meeting they didn't know I actually understood. On Tuesday, I drove to the library and used their computers to research power of attorney law in our state. I read articles about elder exploitation, about how adult children sometimes manipulate aging parents into signing over control of their assets. I learned about the warning signs, the red flags, the tactics. I learned that the best exploitation schemes are legal. They rely on trust, on assumption, on the victim not asking questions. They work because people feel guilty for doubting their own children, because challenging your family feels like betrayal. I felt no guilt. That evening, Derek called to confirm the meeting. All set for tomorrow, Dad. 2 o'clock? I'll be there, I said. Great. It's really straightforward stuff. Shouldn't take long. Just some updates to make things easier down the road. Sure. Oh, and Dad, don't stress about it. This is all just paperwork. Nothing changes day to day. I'm not stressed, I said, and I wasn't. I was focused. After we hung up, I tested the recorder again, making sure it picked up my voice clearly from different positions in my pocket. I practiced setting it to record without looking, just by feel. I checked the timestamp feature to make sure it would mark when each recording started. Then I went to bed early and slept better than I had in weeks. Wednesday morning, I dressed carefully. Button-down shirt, slacks, my good shoes. The kind of outfit that said I took this seriously but wasn't trying too hard. I put the recorder in my shirt pocket where it would be hidden but positioned to catch conversation clearly. I arrived at Patterson & Klein's office at 1:45. Early, but not suspiciously so. The office was on the second floor of a professional building, the kind with gray carpet and generic landscape paintings on the walls. The waiting room had leather chairs and a coffee table covered in magazines about retirement and estate planning. A young receptionist sat behind a desk, typing on her computer. Can I help you? Robert Brennan. I have a 2 o'clock with Mr. Patterson. She checked her computer, nodded, smiled. Great. You're a bit early. Can I get you some coffee or water? I'm fine, thanks. I sat in one of the chairs and waited, my hand in my pocket, fingers on the recorder. I didn't turn it on yet, not until everyone was in the room. Derek and Vanessa arrived at 1:55. Derek saw me and smiled, walking over to shake my hand like we were meeting for lunch instead of a legal ambush. Hey, Dad, ready for the world's most boring hour? Sure, I said. Vanessa smiled too, but hers was more controlled, more watchful. She was wearing business clothes, a blazer and slacks, her hair pulled back. She looked like someone who'd come from an important meeting and had somewhere important to go afterward. At exactly 2 o'clock, the receptionist led us down a hallway to a conference room. Mr. Patterson was already there, standing by the table, a folder of documents in front of him. He was a tall man with gray hair and expensive glasses, the kind of person who looked trustworthy by default. Mr. Brennan, he said, extending his hand. Good to meet you in person. I shook it. Likewise. Please, everyone sit. We arranged ourselves around the table, Derek and Vanessa on one side, me on the other, Patterson at the head. There was a chair labeled with my name, a detail that felt both professional and presumptuous. I sat down and reached into my pocket, finding the recorder by feel. One button press. I felt it activate, the slight vibration that meant it was recording. Patterson opened his folder and began to speak. Thank you all for coming. As I explained to Derek, and as I mentioned to you on the phone, Mr. Brennan, we're here today to review some updates to your estate planning documents. These changes are designed to provide clarity and ensure that, should you need assistance with financial or medical decisions in the future, there's a clear process in place. He slid a document across the table to me. It was thick, maybe 30 pages, with colored tabs marking various sections. This is your new durable power of attorney for finances. It designates Derek as your primary agent, with authority to manage your financial affairs, access your accounts, make investment decisions, and handle your property. It takes effect immediately upon signing, though of course you retain full control of your own affairs as long as you're capable. I didn't touch the document. I looked at it, then at Patterson, then at Derek. When did we discuss me needing help with financial decisions? Derek leaned forward, his expression patient, understanding. Dad, we didn't. This is just a precaution. Everyone should have this stuff in order. If something happened tomorrow, if you were in an accident or got sick, this makes sure I can pay your bills, handle things for you. It's responsible planning. I see. I looked back at Patterson. And this takes effect immediately? Yes, though as I said, even though I'm not incapacitated. Patterson hesitated, just a fraction. That's correct. It's called a durable power of attorney because it remains in effect even if you become incapacitated later. But you retain all your rights. This simply allows Derek to act on your behalf if needed, or whenever he wants to. The room got very quiet. Derek's expression shifted, the patient understanding hardening into something else. Dad, that's not how this works. I'm not trying to take anything from you. This is standard estate planning. Is it standard to tell the attorney I have health concerns when I don't? Patterson's eyes flicked to Derek, then back to me. Mr. Brennan, I think there may be some confusion. I spoke to my doctor yesterday, I said, keeping my voice level. Asked him to fax you my recent physical results. You should have received them this morning. I hadn't actually done that, but Patterson didn't know that, and the bluff was worth the gamble. Patterson glanced at Derek again, and in that glance I saw the truth. He had received something, or he hadn't, but realized he should have asked for verification. Either way, doubt had entered the room. Mr. Brennan, Vanessa said, her voice smooth and calm, I think we're getting off track. This isn't about your health. It's about being prepared. All families should have these conversations. Then we should have had a conversation, I said, not a meeting where documents are already prepared based on information I never provided. Derek stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Jesus, Dad, I was trying to help you. I've been watching you struggle with basic stuff, forgetting appointments, losing paperwork. I thought getting this organized would take some pressure off. What appointments have I forgotten? What? You said I've been forgetting appointments. Which ones? He faltered just for a second. I don't know. Mom mentioned you seemed scattered when she talked to you last month. My ex-wife and I hadn't spoken in over a year. She lived in Arizona with her new husband and had made it clear she was done with anything involving our old life. I stood up slowly, keeping my hands visible, non-threatening. Mr. Patterson, I appreciate your time. I won't be signing anything today. If Derek wants to discuss estate planning with me, we can do that privately, as a family. But I won't be transferring any decision-making authority to anyone while I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions. Dad, Derek started. We're done, I said. I walked out of the conference room, down the hallway, past the receptionist, and out into the parking lot. My heart was hammering, adrenaline flooding my system, but I kept my pace steady, controlled. I got in my truck, started the engine, and drove 3 blocks before pulling into a gas station parking lot. Then I sat there, hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel, and pulled out the recorder. I played back the last 10 minutes. Every word was clear. Patterson explaining the documents, Derek claiming I was struggling with basic tasks, me asking questions they couldn't answer. I saved the file, backed it up to my phone, then emailed it to myself. Evidence, just in case. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. We need to talk. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove home, parked in my driveway, and went inside. The house was quiet and empty, the way it had been for years, but now the silence felt different. Not lonely, but watchful. I went to my office and pulled out a notebook, started making a list. Things I knew. Derek had researched my assets. He'd spoken to my financial advisor. He'd requested copies of my property deed. He'd fabricated health concerns to an attorney. He'd prepared legal documents to give himself control of my finances. Things I didn't know. Why? What was the end game? What did he need access to my accounts for? What was he planning that required me to be legally sidelined? And the question that bothered me most, was this his idea or Vanessa's? I thought about that overheard conversation, about how she'd ask the questions while he provided the confident answers. I thought about how she'd been the one to smooth things over in Patterson's office, the one who tried to redirect when I started pushing back. Derek was a salesman. He could sell you a car you didn't need and make you thank him for it. But Vanessa was a strategist. She thought in systems, in long-term planning, in contingencies. If this was a scheme, she was the architect, which meant there was more I wasn't seeing yet. I opened my laptop and started searching. Property records, business filings, court documents, all public information, all legally accessible, all boring as hell unless you knew what you were looking for. I had been a research librarian for 30 years before I retired. I knew how to find information people didn't realize was public, and I had nothing but time. Before we go any further, hit the hype button, take a second to subscribe, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? I spent the next week like an archaeologist sifting through ruins, except the ruins were digital and the artifacts were PDFs of county records. Most people don't realize how much of their life is documented in publicly accessible databases. Property transactions, business licenses, civil court filings, tax liens, marriage records, birth certificates. It's all there, waiting for anyone patient enough to look. I was very patient. What I found was a pattern. Small things that wouldn't mean anything individually but together painted a picture that made the meeting at Patterson and Klein make sense. Derek and Vanessa had purchased their house 4 years ago. I'd helped with the down payment, $20,000 that I'd given them as a gift, no strings attached. According to the property records, they'd refinanced twice since then. The first time, 18 months ago, they'd pulled out $60,000 in equity. The second time, 6 months ago, another $40,000. $100,000 extracted from a house whose down payment I'd funded. I cross-referenced those dates with business filings. Derek had started a consulting company 3 years ago, something about helping small businesses optimize their operations. It sounded impressive in the way things do when they're mostly air. According to the state business registry, the company had been dissolved 8 months ago, voluntarily dissolved, which usually meant it hadn't worked out. I dug deeper, found a civil filing from 9 months ago, a lawsuit from one of Derek's clients claiming breach of contract. It had been settled, but settlements meant money changed hands, usually a lot of it. Then I found Vanessa's business. She ran a boutique marketing agency, or at least that's what her website said. Except her business license had lapsed 2 months ago, and her office address, listed on every piece of paperwork, was a UPS store. They were drowning. Not publicly, not in any way their friends would notice, but financially they were underwater and sinking. And they'd decided I was the life raft. I printed everything, built a folder of documents that told a story without needing much narration, business failures, refinanced mortgages, a lawsuit settlement. And then, right when things got most desperate, suddenly Derek was very interested in Dad's estate planning, in making sure there was a clear process for accessing Dad's assets if needed, or if convenient. I called my financial advisor again. Paul, it's Robert Brennan. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, Robert. What's going on? When Derek called asking about my accounts, did he at any point suggest that I was having cognitive difficulties? Memory problems, confusion, anything like that? A long pause. Then, he didn't say it directly, but he implied it. Asked what the process was if you became unable to manage your own affairs. He seemed concerned. Did he ask about specific accounts? Amounts? He asked about your total portfolio value. I told him I couldn't disclose that without your permission. He didn't push, just said he understood. And did you tell him? No. Absolutely not. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate your honesty. I hesitated, then added, I'm going to be making some changes. Probably soon. I wanted to give you a heads up. Changes? To beneficiaries, to account access, to how things are structured. Nothing's happening today, but I wanted you to know I'll be calling. Robert, is everything okay? It will be, I said. After I hung up, I sat looking at my folder of documents. I had evidence of financial problems. I had evidence of Derek researching my assets. I had a recording of him lying to an attorney about my health. What I didn't have was evidence of criminal activity. Nothing they'd done was illegal. Lying to your dad's lawyer isn't a crime if you don't follow through with fraud. Asking questions about someone's finances isn't illegal. Even trying to convince someone to sign a power of attorney isn't illegal if they don't sign it. They'd been careful. Or maybe they'd just been desperate and lucky. I needed to know what they were planning next. They hadn't gotten what they wanted at Patterson's office, so they'd have to try something else. People like Derek didn't just give up when the first approach failed. They adapted. The question was, would they try to repair the relationship first, smooth things over, rebuild trust before making another run at control, or would they escalate? I got my answer 3 days later. It started with a phone call from Jim, my neighbor, the one who'd loaned me his car, whose different vehicle in the driveway had allowed me to overhear that first conversation. "Rob, weird question for you," he said. "Did you ask someone to come by and assess your house?" "Assess it for what?" "I don't know. Some guy in a suit was walking around your property this morning, taking pictures, writing stuff on a clipboard. I asked him what he was doing, and he said Derek had hired him to do a property evaluation. Something about estate planning." I felt that cold clarity again, sharper now. "What company was he from?" Hang on. I took a picture of his card. I heard shuffling. "Prestige Property Consulting. Said he does evaluations for estate attorneys." "Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the call." "Everything okay over there?" "Yeah, just a miscommunication." I hung up and immediately called Prestige Property Consulting. A woman answered, professional and cheerful. "Hi, this is Robert Brennan. I believe someone from your company was at my property this morning?" "Oh yes, Mr. Brennan. Your son hired us to conduct an evaluation. We're preparing a comprehensive assessment for estate planning purposes." "And did my son mention that I live there? That it's my property?" A pause. "He said it was a family property, and that you'd been informed about the evaluation." "I see. Who authorized you to enter the property and take photographs?" "Well, your son provided the address and—" "Without my permission, on property I own." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Brennan, if there's been a miscommunication, cancel the evaluation. If anyone from your company comes to my property again without my explicit written permission, I'll consider it trespassing. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir. I'll make a note in the file." I ended the call and sat very still, feeling anger start to replace the cold clarity. They were moving forward. Without my signature, without my cooperation, they were still moving forward. Getting my property evaluated, probably planning to use that evaluation in some legal argument about capacity or care needs or estate management. My phone rang. Derek. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, voicemail again, then a text. "Dad, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand." I didn't respond. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and keys and drove to the county courthouse. The records office was in the basement, a fluorescent-lit space that smelled like old paper and toner. A clerk sat behind bulletproof glass, looking bored. "I need to file a document," I said. "What kind?" "Revocation of any implied authority regarding my property and affairs." She looked at me with slightly more interest. "You'll want a declaration form. Costs $15 to file." She passed a form through the slot. I filled it out carefully, stating clearly that I, Robert Brennan, was of sound mind and body, that I revoked any implied or stated authority for any other party to act on my behalf regarding my property or finances, and that any documentation suggesting otherwise was unauthorized and invalid. It wasn't ironclad legal protection, but it was something. A public record stating my position, dated and filed. Evidence of intent. I paid the $15 and got my stamped copy. Then I drove to my bank, walked in and asked to speak to the branch manager. Her name was Leslie, and we'd talked a few times over the years about investment options and account features. "Robert, good to see you. What can I help you with?" "I need to add some security flags to my accounts." We went to her office. I sat across from her desk and explained, keeping it simple and factual. My son had been attempting to gain access to my financial information. He'd contacted my financial advisor, hired a property evaluator, tried to get me to sign legal documents under false pretenses. I wasn't making accusations of fraud, but I wanted to ensure my accounts were protected. Leslie listened, her expression professional but concerned. "We can definitely add some security protocols. Two-factor authentication on all online access, a verbal password required for phone transactions, flag any attempts to add authorized users to your accounts. Do that, all of it. And you should know, if anyone tries to present a power of attorney document for your accounts, we're required to verify it carefully. But if you want, I can add a note to your file stating you've specifically flagged concerns about unauthorized access attempts." "Yes, do that too." We spent 20 minutes going through security procedures. By the time I left, my accounts were locked down tighter than they'd ever been. I felt better. Not safe, but better. Like I'd closed some windows in a house where someone had been trying to break in. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Derek. "Dad, please, just talk to me." I almost responded. Almost. The parent in me, The part that remembered teaching him to ride a bike and helping with homework and being proud when he graduated college. That part wanted to call him and ask what the hell he was thinking. But I didn't. Because the other part of me, the part that had listened to him tell his wife I'd never check the papers, that part knew talking wouldn't help. They'd made their decision about who I was, what I was worth, how I fit into their plans. Now I needed to make mine. That evening, I sat in my office with a notepad and started planning. Not revenge, not yet. First, I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. Patterson's office had been one angle. The property evaluation was another. What else were they working on? I called my insurance company, asked to speak to a supervisor, explained that I wanted to verify who was listed as beneficiary on my life insurance policy and confirmed that no changes had been requested recently. The supervisor, a patient-sounding woman named Gloria, pulled up my account. Your current beneficiary is Derek Brennan, your son. That was set up when you opened the policy 12 years ago. Have there been any recent inquiries about the policy? Anyone calling to ask questions, request information, anything like that? Let me check. Yes, actually. Derek Brennan called 3 weeks ago asking about the policy payout structure and whether beneficiaries could be changed by someone other than the policyholder. And what did you tell him? That only you can make changes to your policy. We explained the process for updating beneficiaries if you chose to do so. I see. I'd like to change my beneficiary. Of course, I can start that process now if you'd like, or I can mail you the forms. Mail them. I want to review everything before I make it official. Not a problem. You should have them within 5 business days. After I hung up, I added insurance to my list. Life insurance, property, retirement accounts. Probably my pension too, if they could figure out how to access information about it. They weren't planning to help me, they were planning to replace me. My phone rang again. This time it was Vanessa. I stared at the screen for a moment, then answered. Hello. Robert. Her voice was calm, friendly even. I'm glad you picked up. I know things got tense at the attorney's office, and I wanted to clear the air. Did you? Derek is really worried about you. He feels like maybe he came on too strong, pushed too fast. He was just trying to help to make sure you're protected. You know how he is? He gets focused on fixing things and forgets to slow down and explain. I said nothing, just let her talk. We're not trying to take anything from you, Robert. We're family. We want what's best for you. But I think maybe we all need to take a step back, communicate better. Would you be willing to sit down with us, just the 3 of us, and talk this through? Why did Derek hire someone to evaluate my property without telling me? Silence on her end. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. A man from Prestige Property Consulting came to my house this morning, said Derek hired him for an estate evaluation. That must be a misunderstanding. Derek wouldn't do that without talking to you first. He did it, just like he met with an attorney without talking to me first, just like he's been researching my accounts and calling my financial advisor without talking to me first. Robert, I'm not interested in sitting down and talking. I'm interested in being left alone. Derek is your son. He loves you. Then he should act like it. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear. From anger, pure and clean. They were trying to gaslight me to make me think I was being unreasonable, that I was the problem. Classic manipulation, the kind that works on people who doubt themselves. I didn't doubt myself. I opened my laptop and started a new document. Titled it Timeline. Started entering dates and events. Everything I knew. Everything I'd found. When Derek's business dissolved, when they refinanced their house, when he first contacted my financial advisor, when he scheduled the meeting with Patterson, when the property evaluator showed up, patterns emerged. Everything had accelerated in the last 3 months. Something had changed, some pressure point had been reached, and suddenly they'd gone from casual planning to active execution. I needed to know what that pressure point was. I picked up my phone and called my ex-wife. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but I still had her number. She answered on the 3rd ring, suspicious. Robert? Hi, Linda. I know this is out of the blue, but I need to ask you something. What's going on? Is Derek okay? Interesting that she'd ask about Derek specifically. When's the last time you talked to him? I don't know. Maybe 2 months ago. He called to wish me happy birthday. Why? Did he mention anything about me, about being worried or thinking I needed help? No, we barely talked about you at all. Robert, what is this about? He's been telling people I'm having health problems, that I'm declining, that I need someone to manage my affairs. I'm trying to figure out where that story came from. A long pause. Then, that's insane. You're healthier than I am. I know. Why would he say that? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Another pause. I could almost hear her thinking. Linda was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. Is he in trouble? Financially? Yes, I think so. And he thinks you'll bail him out? I think he thinks I won't have a choice. She swore softly. What are you going to do? I haven't decided yet. Robert, be careful. Derek can be... She trailed off. Can be what? Ruthless. When he wants something. He gets that from you, actually. That focus, that determination. But he doesn't have your patience. After we hung up, I sat with that for a while. Ruthless. It was an interesting word choice. Not mean, not cruel, but ruthless. Willing to do what needed to be done. She was right. He did get that from me. I looked at my timeline document, at all the dates and events. They were building a case, a narrative. Father in decline, son stepping up responsibly. Get the legal framework in place first. Power of attorney, updated will, property evaluations. Then what? Force a competency hearing. Get a doctor to sign off on cognitive decline. Move me into assisted living so they could rent out my house. I didn't know the end game, but I knew they had one. And I knew I had to move before they did. I pulled up a new document and started writing. Not a plan, not yet, just possibilities. Options, ways to turn their strategy back on them. If they wanted to treat me like an incompetent old man, I could use that. If they wanted to make decisions about my property and finances, I could let them think they had a chance. If they wanted to play this game, I'd play it better. But first, I needed more information. I needed to know what the deadline was, what pressure was forcing their hand. People don't accelerate from slow planning to active execution unless something's driving them. I needed to find out what. They escalated 3 days later. I was driving back from the hardware store, taking the long route because the weather was decent and I had nothing pressing to do. The road wound through a semi-rural area on the outskirts of town, the kind of stretch where houses were spaced far apart and traffic was usually sparse. That's probably why Derek chose it. I saw his car pulled over on the shoulder ahead, hazard lights blinking. My first instinct was to keep driving, but something made me slow down. Maybe curiosity. Maybe some remaining shred of parental concern. Maybe just a desire to see what move they'd make next. I pulled over behind him and got out. Derek was standing next to his car, looking at his phone. When he saw me, he put it away and walked toward me. His expression was neutral, controlled. No anger like there'd been at my house. Just a kind of focused calm that made me immediately wary. Dad, thanks for stopping. Car trouble? Not exactly. I wanted to talk to you and you weren't answering your phone. Figured this was the best way. You set up an ambush on a county road. I prefer to think of it as creating an opportunity for dialogue. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes? I glanced at his car. Vanessa wasn't in it, but I could see someone in the passenger seat. A man I didn't recognize. Dark hair, suit jacket. Who's your friend? Business associate. He's not part of this conversation. Then why is he here? Moral support. Derek's smile stayed fixed. Come on, Dad. 5 minutes. You owe me that. I didn't owe him anything, but I was curious enough to see where this was going. I followed him a few steps away from the vehicles, far enough that the passenger couldn't hear us clearly, but close enough that I could keep both Derek and the car in my line of sight. Here's the situation, Derek said, his voice low and measured. We have a week until our mortgage payment is due. If we don't make that payment, we lose the house. We've burned through every option, maxed out every credit card, tapped every favor. You're the last option. No. I'm not asking for a gift. I'm asking for a loan. $30,000? We'll pay you back at 10% interest over 2 years. I'll sign a promissory note. Make it official. You'll actually make money on this. No. His jaw tightened. You're really going to let us lose our house? I'm going to let you deal with the consequences of your decisions. Our decisions? Dad, you tanked our investment opportunity. You called everyone we know and destroyed our reputation. You've been sabotaging us at every turn. I stopped you from getting scammed. If you want to call that sabotage, fine. We needed that opportunity. You needed a fantasy. What you need now is to face reality. Derek stepped closer, his controlled calm starting to crack. You're a vindictive old man who can't stand that his son doesn't need him anymore. That's what this is really about. Not protecting yourself, not being careful. You're angry that we saw through you, that we tried to work around you instead of begging for your approval. If that's what you think, then we definitely don't have anything more to discuss. I turned to walk back to my truck. Derek grabbed my arm. We're not done. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. Let go. Not until you listen. Let go, or I'll make you let go. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You'll make me? You're 62 years old, Dad. What are you going to do? I didn't answer. Just twisted my arm in a quick, sharp movement, breaking his grip. It was a basic self-defense technique I'd learned in a workplace safety class 20 years ago. Derek stumbled back, surprised. Don't touch me again, I said. That's when the passenger got out of Derek's car. He was younger than Derek, maybe early 30s, with the kind of muscular build that suggested either a gym membership or a physical job. He walked toward us with the casual confidence of someone who was used to intimidating people with his presence alone. Everything okay here? He asked Derek, but his eyes were on me. Fine, Derek said. Just a family disagreement. Didn't look fine. I looked at Derek. Who is this? I told you, business associate. You brought muscle to threaten your father. Nobody's threatening anyone, the man said, but maybe you should hear your son out. Seems like he's trying to be reasonable and you're being stubborn. I felt adrenaline start to flood my system, the old fight or flight response kicking in. 2 against 1, on an empty road, with Derek desperate and the stranger clearly hired to apply pressure. I'd walked into exactly the kind of situation I should have avoided. I'm leaving, I said, backing toward my truck. Dad, wait, Derek started. No, we're done. Don't contact me again. Don't come to my house. Don't set up any more ambushes. We're done. I made it to my truck and got in, locking the doors. Derek came to my window, talking, but I couldn't hear him over the sound of my engine starting. His friend stayed back, watching, his posture relaxed but ready. I pulled out onto the road and drove away, checking my rearview mirror every few seconds. They didn't follow. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Not from fear, exactly. From anger, from adrenaline, from the reality of what had just happened. My son had tried to physically intimidate me into giving him money. When I got home, I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, just breathing, letting my heart rate settle. Then I went inside and called Ellen Marsh. We need to accelerate everything, I told her. They're getting desperate. We talked for 20 minutes. She drafted a cease and desist letter to be sent to both Derek and Vanessa, formally demanding they stop contacting me and attempting to access my financial information. She also suggested I file for a restraining order if they continued the harassment. That's a nuclear option, she warned. It'll destroy whatever's left of your relationship. There's nothing left to destroy. After I hung up with Ellen, I sat at my kitchen table and thought about that ambush on the county road. The stranger Derek had brought with him. The physical grab, the attempt to intimidate, they'd crossed a line. Not into illegality, not quite, but into something more dangerous. Desperation plus aggression was a volatile combination. I needed to know more about Derek's situation, not just the finances, which I already understood, but the personal side, the pressure points, the relationships, the full picture of how desperate they really were. I called an old colleague from my library days. Martin had retired the same year I did, but he'd stayed more active in the community, volunteered with social groups, knew everyone. Martin, it's Rob. I need a favor. Name it. Derek and Vanessa. You know them socially, right? A bit. We've crossed paths at fundraisers, community events. Why? I need to know how they're perceived, their reputation, their social standing, whether people know they're in trouble. Martin was quiet for a moment. Rob, what's going on? They're in financial trouble, and they've been trying to get money from me through increasingly aggressive means. I need to understand their full situation. Jesus. Okay, give me a day or two. I'll ask around discreetly. Thanks. He called back 2 days later with a report that painted an interesting picture. Derek and Vanessa were well-liked but considered flashy, the kind of couple who always seemed to be doing well, posting about expensive dinners and weekend trips on social media. But recently, people had noticed cracks. Vanessa had stopped attending certain social events, claimed she was too busy with work. Derek had been asking people in his network about job opportunities, but in a way that suggested urgency rather than casual exploration. Their mortgage company had started foreclosure proceedings. That was public record, something Martin had verified through the county courthouse. They had 30 days to catch up on payments, or the house would be sold at auction. They're about to lose everything, Martin said, and based on what I'm hearing, they don't have anywhere else to turn. After I hung up, I sat with that information. 30 days. Maybe less now, depending on when the foreclosure notice was filed. They were on a countdown clock, and they knew it, which meant they'd keep escalating until that clock ran out. I spent the next week preparing. I had security cameras installed at my house, front and back. I changed my daily routine, varied my schedule, made sure I wasn't predictable. I kept my phone charged and nearby at all times. I told my neighbors, including Jim, that if they saw Derek or Vanessa at my house when I wasn't home, they should call the police. I also reached out to Paul, my financial advisor, and confirmed all the security measures were in place. Then I did something else. I moved assets. Not all of them, just enough to be noticeable. Transferred funds from easily accessible accounts into trust accounts and retirement vehicles that couldn't be touched without significant legal process. If Derek did somehow manage to get access to my accounts, he'd find less than he expected. Ellen sent the cease and desist letter. Derek responded with his own letter, sent through an attorney I'd never heard of. It was full of legal language that essentially said I was being unreasonable, that I was damaging family relationships, and that he reserved the right to pursue legal remedies if I continued to interfere with his life. It was nonsense, posturing. But it told me he was still looking for an angle, still hoping to find a legal lever to use against me. The solution came to me at 2 a.m., the way good ideas often do. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Derek's performance at the city council meeting, when I realized the key weakness in their strategy. They were relying on people not asking questions, on community members hearing Derek's concerned son routine and taking it at face value, on me looking defensive and paranoid instead of rational and prepared. But what if people did ask questions? What if I gave them a reason to look deeper? I got up and went to my office, opened my laptop, and started writing. Not a defense, not an explanation, just a clear, factual timeline of events. October 3rd. Overheard son discussing plans to get me to sign documents without reading them. October 10th. Meeting scheduled with attorney without my knowledge, based on false claims about my health. October 15th. Property evaluator attempted to access my home without permission. October 22nd. Son attempted to intimidate me into providing loan, brought unidentified associate for backup. October 28th. Son made public statements questioning my mental capacity at city council meeting. I included dates, names, locations. I attached supporting documentation, the recording from Patterson's office, photos of the past due bills from Derek's house, screenshots of the foreclosure notice. Everything organized, everything factual, nothing emotional or accusatory beyond the bare facts. Then I sent it to 3 people. Martin, who knew everyone in the community, Jim, my neighbor, who'd already seen some of what was happening, and Ellen Marsh, my attorney, who could advise me if I was crossing any legal lines. I wasn't publishing it online. I wasn't sending it to dozens of people. I was sharing it with 3 trusted individuals who could verify the information and, if they chose, share it with others who needed to know. Let the truth spread organically, person to person, backed by evidence. Martin called me at 8 a.m. Rob, I read your timeline. Jesus Christ. It's all verifiable. I believe you. What do you want me to do with this? Nothing, specifically. But if people ask about the situation, if Derek's narrative starts spreading, I want the truth available as a counterpoint. I can do that. And Rob, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Thanks. Jim's response was more direct. He came to my house that afternoon with a printed copy of my timeline. I showed this to Karen, he said, referring to his wife. We both agree. If Derek or Vanessa show up here again, we're calling the police. No questions, no benefit of the doubt. They've burned that bridge. I appreciate that. And I'm going to mention this to the other neighbors. Not gossiping, just making sure people know to be aware. That okay with you? That's perfect. Ellen's response was the most cautious. She called me and asked me to come to her office. When I got there, she had my timeline printed and annotated. This is good documentation, she said, but I need to caution you about one thing. If this becomes too public, if it looks like you're engaged in a campaign to defame Derek and Vanessa, they could have grounds for a lawsuit. Everything in here is true and verifiable. I know, but truth is a defense against defamation, not a shield against harassment claims. If they can argue that you're deliberately damaging their reputation and livelihood, that's a different legal question. So, what do you recommend? Keep it limited. Share with people who have a legitimate need to know, neighbors, close friends, people who might be approached by Derek for money or support. Don't post it online. Don't send it to their employers or business contacts. Don't make it a weapon. Keep it a shield. Understood. Over the next week, I did exactly that. Shared the timeline with a small circle of people who mattered. Made sure the truth was available without making it a crusade. And it worked. Martin reported that several people in Derek and Vanessa's social circle had reached out to him, concerned about what they had heard. He'd shared my documentation, and the consensus shifted from worried about poor Rob's declining health to concerned about what Derek and Vanessa have been doing. Jim mentioned that the neighborhood watch group now had my situation on their radar. Several neighbors had asked him for details, and he'd shared the basics without editorializing. Just facts, just awareness. And Ellen confirmed that Derek's attorney had gone quiet after the cease and desist letter. No follow-up, no escalation, no legal threats. They'd been planning to push harder, but something had made them pause. I'd turned the narrative. Not dramatically, not loudly, but effectively, which meant Derek and Vanessa would have to adapt again. They did, but not in the way I expected. On November 3rd, I got a call from my homeowner's insurance company, a pleasant representative informing me that there'd been a claim filed against my policy. "What kind of claim?" I asked. "Property damage. Water damage, specifically. The claim was filed by Derek Brennan, who listed himself as residing at your address. He reported a burst pipe that caused significant damage to the basement." "I don't have a basement." A pause. "I'm sorry?" "My house is built on a slab foundation. There is no basement, and Derek doesn't live here." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Brennan, I'm going to need to put you on hold for a moment." I waited, my mind racing. Insurance fraud. They were filing false claims against my homeowner's policy, probably hoping to get a payout they could intercept before I noticed. The representative came back on. "Mr. Brennan, I've flagged this claim for investigation. Can you come to our office tomorrow to provide a statement?" "Absolutely." The next day, I spent 2 hours with an insurance investigator, going through every detail. My house layout, my relationship with Derek, the timeline of our dispute. I provided documentation, property records showing the foundation type, photos of my house interior, the cease and desist letter Ellen had sent. The investigator, a middle-aged man with the tired expression of someone who'd seen every scam in the book, took notes without comment. When I finished, he sat back and sighed. "This is pretty clear-cut fraud," he said. "We'll be denying the claim and reporting this to the state insurance commissioner. Depending on what they find, there could be criminal charges." "Will I need to be involved?" "Possibly. You might be called as a witness if it goes to court, but the insurance commissioner's office will handle the investigation." I left the office feeling something unexpected. Not satisfaction exactly, just a kind of grim vindication. They'd gone too far, crossed from unethical into illegal, and now there would be consequences I didn't have to engineer. 2 days later, Derek called me. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. His voice was tight, strained, different from the confident tone I was used to. "Dad, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding with the insurance thing. That was Vanessa's idea. I didn't know she was going to do it. I can fix this, but I need you to call back. Please." I deleted the voicemail without responding. An hour later, Vanessa called. I answered this time, curious to hear how she'd spin it. "Robert, there's been a terrible mistake," she said, her voice smooth and apologetic. "I was trying to help you, trying to file a legitimate claim for some water damage I noticed last time I was at your house, and I must have made an error in the paperwork. I'm so sorry for the confusion." "You weren't at my house. I changed the locks after Derek's key went missing, and there's no water damage because there's no basement." "Robert, you're misremembering. I was there 2 weeks ago, don't you recall? We brought dinner, and I noticed moisture in the lower level." "Stop. I have security cameras. I have records of everyone who's entered my house. You haven't been here in 3 months?" Silence on her end. "This is insurance fraud, Vanessa. It's a felony. The insurance commissioner is investigating." "It was a mistake," she said, but her voice had lost its smooth confidence. "A paperwork error. We'll withdraw the claim." "Too late. It's already been flagged and reported." "Robert, please. This will destroy us. Derek could lose his professional license. We'll never be able to work in finance or consulting again." "You should have thought of that before you committed fraud. We're desperate. Don't you understand that? We're about to lose our house. Our credit is destroyed. We have no options left. We made a mistake, but it came from a place of absolute desperation." Desperation doesn't justify fraud, doesn't it? When you're about to lose everything, when you've exhausted every legitimate option, what are you supposed to do? Just give up and let your life collapse? "Yes," I said. "You give up the life you can't afford and build a new one. You declare bankruptcy, you downsize, you start over. What you don't do is commit crimes and blame it on your circumstances." She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "You really are a cruel man." "I'm a man who won't be victimized by his own son." I hung up. The insurance fraud investigation moved forward. I gave my statement to an investigator from the state insurance commissioner's office, provided my documentation, confirmed that Derek and Vanessa had been attempting to access my assets through various means, and that the fraudulent claim fit that pattern. The investigator told me it would take weeks, maybe months, before any charges were filed. These things moved slowly. But the evidence was clear, and barring any unexpected complications, Derek and Vanessa were looking at serious consequences. Meanwhile, the foreclosure on their house proceeded. I checked the public records weekly, watching the countdown. They had days left before the auction date. I wondered if they'd declare bankruptcy, if they'd try one last desperate play, if they'd finally accept defeat. I got my answer on November 10th, when I came home from grocery shopping to find my front door open. Not broken, not forced. Just open, like someone had used a key. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment, adrenaline spiking. Called 911, reported a possible break-in, waited in my truck until a police cruiser arrived. 2 officers arrived within 5 minutes. I explained the situation. The open door, my dispute with my son, the possibility that he still had a key despite my belief that I'd changed the locks. The officers entered first, checking the house room by room. I waited outside, watching, my heart hammering. They came out 10 minutes later. House is clear. No signs of forced entry, nothing obviously disturbed. You want to come in and check if anything's missing? I went through every room carefully. Nothing was taken. Nothing was obviously moved. But when I got to my office, I saw what they'd been after. My filing cabinet had been opened, not forced, opened with the key that hung on a hook inside my desk drawer. They'd known where to look. The folders were disheveled, papers not quite in the right order. Someone had gone through them, looking for something. My estate planning documents were gone. The folder that contained my will, my power of attorney paperwork, my beneficiary designations, all of it taken. I called the officers back to the office, showed them what was missing. "Why would someone take estate planning documents?" one of them asked. "Because my son's been trying to get control of my assets, and these documents would tell him exactly how everything's structured and what he'd need to change." Now, the officers took a report, photographed the office, the filing cabinet, the empty spot where the folder had been. They advised me to change my locks again, to consider a security system upgrade to document everything. After they left, I sat at my desk and thought through the implications. Derek and Vanessa had my estate planning documents. They knew who my beneficiaries were, how my will was structured, what protections I had in place. They could use that information to forge signatures, to create new documents, to build a more sophisticated fraud scheme. Or they could use it as leverage, threaten to expose embarrassing information, threaten to contest the will, threaten legal action based on some perceived flaw in the documents. I called Ellen Marsh, explained what happened. "File a police report for the theft," she said. "Then we need to update all your estate documents immediately. New will, new power of attorney, new beneficiaries. Make the stolen documents obsolete." "How fast can we do that?" "I can have new documents ready in 2 days. We'll execute them with witnesses and video recording to establish clear evidence of your capacity and intent. Whatever they're planning to do with those stolen documents, we'll make sure it won't work." We spent an hour on the phone going through the changes. I removed Derek as beneficiary on everything, replaced him with a charitable foundation I'd researched, set up a trust that would distribute my assets according to specific criteria, managed by a professional trustee who had no connection to my family. It was harsher than I'd originally planned, more final. But the break-in had eliminated any remaining ambiguity about our relationship. 2 days later, I sat in Ellen's conference room with 2 witnesses, a notary, and a video camera. We went through each document carefully, Ellen asking questions to establish my mental clarity, my understanding of what I was signing, my intent. "Mr. Brennan, do you understand that you're removing your son Derek as beneficiary from your estate?" "Yes." "And do you understand the implications of that decision?" "Completely." "Are you signing these documents of your own free will, without coercion or pressure from any party?" "I am." "And do you believe you have the mental capacity to make these decisions?" "Yes. I'm 62 years old, in good health, and completely capable of managing my own affairs." We signed everything, witnessed, notarized, recorded. Ellen gave me copies and filed the originals in her office safe. "Now," she said, "we wait and see what they do when they realize those stolen documents are worthless." I didn't have to wait long.